Welcome, welcome. Bienvenidos. My name is Dr. Eliana Ramirez. I am so grateful for everyone who is here. We're about to get started. I've got some slides to share. Two of my absolute favorite people on LinkedIn are here with us this afternoon and evening. We're going to hear from them, two of our facilitators, and we're really excited to hear from you as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So this is an informational session. When we are in DEI positions, so many of us who do DEI do this work because we are very committed to our communities. We are doing this work because we know that it's hard to get into the workforce. Perhaps we come from families where we are the first in our family to graduate college. We might be the first in our family to enter into white-collar jobs. And so many of us, when we get into these jobs, really want to ensure that we can bring other people in our communities with us. So this DEI Backlash Survivors Group is about acknowledging that those of us who gave our heart and souls to the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then were either fired, mobbed, forced out of a job, or maybe we fled for our own health, safety, and sanity. The stress of having lived through the last several years of DEI backlash, plus all of the other things that are going on right now, right? From the pandemic to the wildfires to global warming, so many different things have been happening. And we, in the middle of all of that, we're doing DEI work. And so the exhaustion can be significant, and we can have just tremendous loss and injury to our mental health, to our physical health, not to mention our careers. So I wanted to create a group where we could be in community with one another and to help ourselves heal from the backlash against DEI. So I want to start off with sharing with you something from my culture. I identify as Chicana. I am a light-complected Chicana from Mexican and Irish Czech background. For folks who have vision challenges, I am a light-complected woman with long brown hair, red lipstick, and glasses. And the slides are available in the chat if you want to click on the link. This image that's on the slide right now is called Tlaptiani. And this is shared with permission by the artist, who is amazing. So this image is called Tlaptiani, the one who restores themselves, heals themselves, cleans themselves, and rebuilds themselves. And I've got to tell you that when I was going through the early days of my own DEI backlash recovery, I brought this image to my therapist, a very lovely white woman who didn't know what in the world to do with it. And that was one of the first seeds that made me realize, ooh, I need to create a program to help other people like myself who have experienced DEI backlash to heal in community and with our cultural background. Because our communities and our cultures have known how to survive, have known how to keep going beyond backlash and betrayal. And the reason for group coaching is because DEI backlash is a wound that happens in public, in society. And when we are able to be amongst other people who have also experienced this psychological injury, which can become a physical injury, when we are in community together, then we're able to witness one another and where we're at with our own recovery. And so that's why I'd like to bring up this quote by Malcolm X: "When I is replaced by we, even illness becomes wellness." And I just want to acknowledge, if you are here as a DEI backlash survivor, no matter what you are feeling, it's normal. Really, truly. I have met some of the most competent, brilliant, ethical, hardworking, amazing people who were pushed out of jobs, who were fired, who were pushed out because they were actually doing their job. They were actually making a difference to increase the representation of underrepresented people, not only in a company, but to move up through the ranks. And that can leave a terrible wound. so much so that many people even will experience very difficult emotions like suicidal ideation. And I wanted to create a space where we could be open and honest about the real difficulties of this work, because once we start to talk to each other, once we start to share the kinds of institutional betrayal and backlash that we experienced, it will become very clear. This was not about us. We did not cause the injury that happened to us. We were targeted by abusive people and toxic systems. And we will know this because the strategies that they use for DEI backlash are very similar across industries, whether we are in hospitals or healthcare systems or nonprofit agencies or corporate or even, educational systems. The sloppy bigotry that befell us is going to be consistent across those places. So that's why it's so important for us to join together in an environment where we can share with one another what we have experienced, what kinds of injuries we have sustained, and then use information that's based in neuroscience, in somatic practice, to help us to make meaning of what has happened to us, but also start to recover our health, and then to start to build back our professional careers. When we do group coaching, it is a 2-hour event, as we'll share in a moment. The first hour, we're sharing information with you, research literature on what happens to our body when we experience racial trauma, the dynamics in abusive workplaces, how you can protect yourself in an abusive environment, how to avoid as best as possible getting another job that has inauthentic allyship, performative allyship. They say they want you to come in the DEI position, but as soon as you actually start doing the job, they push you out. How to avoid these kinds of things. So we are sharing information from the research literature. We are also teaching somatic practices to help you regulate your nervous system so that you can tolerate the discomfort of, these experiences that happen at work, and also the myriad of other things that are happening around us outside in the world. So this session today is giving you little tastes of different aspects of the actual group coaching. So with that, I'm so excited to introduce to you 2 of our amazing facilitators. You can see on the screen here that we have 5 facilitators who will be doing individual small group breakout room discussions for half of the 2 hours. Here we have Dr. Carrie Azid, who's the author of Unbreak My Soul, How Black Women Can Begin to Heal Workplace Trauma. We are also so fortunate to work with Carrie Page, who is a citizen of the Métis Nation and advocate for silenced voices. And in the future, we'll do another LinkedIn Live so that you can meet those 2 amazing people. And today, it is my true honor and privilege to bring on stage here Jaya Malik and Michael Thornhill. Michael T., welcome to you both. I'm so grateful that you're here.
Thanks for having us.
What a joy.
So LinkedIn Live folks, these are literally 2 of my favorite people on LinkedIn. Both of them have just been these incredible allies, co-conspirators for justice in the last couple of years, and they both have done phenomenal work in the field of DEI. I'm going to invite them both to introduce themselves to you and to tell us a little bit about why you're excited to do this group coaching cohort. Jaya, we'll start with you, please.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be here and in community with all of you. My name is Jaya Malik. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am the founder of Jaya Malik Coaching and Consulting. Prior to that, I actually led DEI efforts at several companies, primarily in the tech space, including Amazon, Meta, and Tandem Diabetes Care most recently. I live in the Seattle area with my family. I have 2 young girls of my own, and they're a big motivator for why I continue to do this work, to help us shift the world to a better place with more opportunity for them. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you so much. Michael, would you introduce yourself, please?
I'd be honored. My name is Michael Thornhill, and trying to think what's worthy of sharing. I've had the privilege of doing consulting work around DEI at places like Northwestern University, University of Michigan, different art organizations, as well as a lot of different religious spaces. And so that's some of my background, but a lot of my background is in my wounding. A lot of my background is in learning that it's not all good. And so I come from a background where I'm adopted, I'm a twin, I'm Ghanaian Cuban American. And, I've learned a lot about my story. I'm cisgender. And I've also realized that there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot more hurting people out there that really have trouble believing their own stories and believing their own experiences. And I'm here to say you're not crazy. And we're here to collectively say, with what we're going to present to you and tell you that we want to offer, is that you're not crazy, you're not alone. And guess what? Like, you're not powerless. And for me in my story, most importantly, you're not defective. That there's actually nothing wrong with you. And I say this as someone who lost use of his legs because I was white knuckling and bracing so often and so hard while trying to put out my best, while being treated the worst I've experienced in my whole life. And I know that I'm not the only one naming this. I'm not the only one who's experienced this. I have friends of mine who's experienced gastric ulcers and all kinds of things. But basically, and you'll hear us say this countless times as your facilitators, you are not defective. There's nothing wrong with you genetically. And so I'll pause there, but it's a joy and honor to focus our strengths, not just on the white bodies that hire us, but the Black and brown bodies that survive alongside us. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I just a little bit of like a nervous system recognition. You're reminding me, when I was mobbed out of a DEI position, and it was devastating. I have never experienced anything quite like that before. And I'm a person who has multiple traumas in life. I'm a social worker. I was held up at gunpoint at one point. I was stalked by a patient at another point. There's a lot that's happened in my life, as many of us. In fact, 67.5% of people who've experienced workplace abuse have had pre-existing interpersonal trauma in their lives from childhood through adulthood. So for many of us, when we experience workplace trauma through DEI backlash, it can really reactivate some of that old trauma. And it can hit us like a Mack truck, in part because when we are in an environment where we're constantly having to have our nervous systems at high alert, we're either in fight or flight constantly, the body does this thing called stress-induced analgesia. It literally keeps us from conscious awareness of the severity of injury that's happening to our bodies in the moment. And it's not until we get out of that dangerous workplace and we start to feel a little bit more settled, a little bit safer, a little bit more calm, that suddenly all of those injuries can flare up. And so part of what's so difficult for us in these DEI positions, when there's performative allyship going on, inauthentic allyship, when they really are sabotaging us and taking resources from us and trying to create a situation where the lies that they're telling about us will come to fruition because they're blocking us from actually doing the darn job they hired us for. Excuse me, off my soapbox for a second. Once we can kind of finally get out of there, then all of a sudden it becomes safer for the body to let us realize, oh, you actually have an injury right there and you got an injury right there. The problem is oftentimes we no longer have access to health insurance. So how in the world are we going to be taking care of ourselves? And in a group coaching cohort with other DEI backlash survivors, we're going to start sharing with each other. This is how I got through that kind of situation. This is how I survived. These are the resources that I was able to pull together when I was out in the community on my own. Because guess what? DEI backlash survivors, you are not alone. You have this incredible 5 group of people who are so freaking committed to you. We love you. We love you. We love our communities. I'm getting shivers talking about this. Okay, let me take it down a second. Woo, yeah, that's right. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about healing, if I can, because I'll bring the heat, but I can also take it down a notch.
Yeah, may I add one more
Please,
thing, Eliana?
yes.
I just gotta Angelica, I just want you to know that we see you in chat. You mentioned that you're in tears, and you're just one of the people that said something in the chat that you're in tears. And I want to speak to all of you that are getting shivers and in tears, and like, and maybe you're not even able to express something, but you feel bloated with emotion, like you feel like your throat is tightening, or maybe you have a headache all of a sudden. Maybe your chest is tight or your gut is dancing. And I'm here to tell you, where Angelica is crying tears, her body is communicating with her that there's data there, and so is your body too. Whether you can name it or express it or not. And I'm speaking as someone who was conditioned as a child. I was called gay and queer and flamer as a kid because I was sensitive and I had access to my tears at 7. So I'm here to tell you that a lot of stuff didn't come up for me as tears. It came up as I can't breathe. Like, you know, it came up as heat. I have nonstop heat in my face. It came up as, you know, bubble guts, right? Like, you know, I don't want to eat anymore. Like, it comes up in a different way, but it's always going to find a way out. And so what Dr. Heliana is about to get into is an offering. But we can't take you where you don't want to go, because we can only take you where we are going ourselves. And so I just wanted to remind you that as you're tuning in or watching this after, that we are here because we are walking this out too. And if you want to show up for your own healing, you will not do it alone. Thank you, Leanne.
All that, co-sign it all. And as somebody who is queer identified, who was raised by a gay father, I can really appreciate what it means to have gay slurs coming at you, especially as a young child, for having the wisdom in your body and the strength of character to be able to experience your emotions that the world says that you are not allowed to experience. And I mean, people already, I'm seeing folks putting comments in the chat because what you're saying, Michael, is so many of us never had access to that information. We didn't know. One of the best things that happened in my workplace trauma recovery was getting involved in somatic abolitionism work that's led by Dr. Resmaa Menakem. And I am called right now to say 2 different quotes that come directly from Dr. Menakem and from Jennifer Lee Coble, who co-facilitates some of the work with him. Dr. Resmaa Menakem says, protective, not defective. So when we have things, when it's hard for us to share our feelings or to get in touch with what's really happening, that's because sometime earlier in our lives, that was a strategy to keep us safe. It was not safe earlier on for us to experience the full range of our emotions. So as adults, then we don't even have access to it unless we do very specific strategic kinds of somatic practices to open that back up again. Jennifer Lee Coble says in somatic abolitionism groups, when people have started to cry, she says, thank you for bringing water here. Thank you for bringing the tears here. Thank you for bringing the medicine here. Because when we cry, and I don't know that this is why she says that, and I might not have gotten the exact quote correct, but that's the message that I receive when she says the thing. What I know from research on tears, when we cry, we are literally releasing toxins from our bodies. When we cry, we are literally engaging with the nervous systems of people around us to rally support for us. When we cry, we are releasing some of the traumatic tension that has been kept in our bodies. And so I really want to say that in this group coaching cohort, tears are completely welcome. You are welcome to show up any way that you want. And I'm going to be meeting with every single person who ends up becoming part of the group coaching cohort, because I want to make sure that we weed out any potential clowns. Some of us are looking at the next couple of days with a certain kind of feeling, right? And I'm nobody's fool. I've been doing this for long enough. So we are putting in extra precautions to try and make sure that it is as safe a place as possible for everyone. Because I'm able to do that kind of screening process. If you show up one week and you don't want to have your camera on, do whatever feels good for you. As long as we know that whoever is there was meant to be there, then we want you to show up in whatever way is comfortable. I know for some people who are living with neurodiversity, for other people who have physical health challenges or what have you, having the camera on the whole time might not actually feel as safe as possible. So we do want to make this as an accessible an event as possible. I'm totally off script now. Jaya, Michael, would either of you like to say anything before I bring the slides back up?
I would love to say something. So, just kind of piggybacking on what Eliana has said, that really we are trying to cultivate a space of shared community healing and collective healing, because we find that this is the most effective way forward. Oftentimes, especially when we're in DEI roles, we tend to be the one of, or the few of, or we're incredibly under-resourced. And so to have to deal with that just practical sort of being under-resourced along with the trauma and the traumatic experiences we're feeling, that's a lot for you, both mentally and physically, to be able to ingest. I know that over time for me, that it became a huge physical toll. And so really, this is a pathway for all of us to come back together in community, because so much of the pain and the trauma that we feel is focused on injuring the individual. And for us to heal collectively can be very powerful. So that way we can show up for our community in the ways that we'd like to. So I'm really excited to be able to be exploring this path. And of course, with Eliana, your research and the evidence-based content that you've really worked on creating for this curriculum, I think that this is going to be an incredible experience.
Thank you so much for that, Jaya. And I just want to acknowledge in the chat, I see Dr. Stapleton has talked about, depends on whose tears. Some of those alligator tears are a weapon, 100%, absolutely. And guess what? This first coaching cohort, this is specifically for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. There will be another coaching cohort for DEI Backlash survivors who are white. Okay, so we are really, because the racial battle fatigue that we experience when we are DEI providers is going to land differently. And for too many of us, the point at which the initial support for our positions, the point at which it was taken away from us was when we refused to center the feelings of white people. So we're doing this first session specifically for Black, Indigenous people of color, and we will have another group coaching cohort with an amazing white DEI leader who we will do it again with white folks. But so for this first one, this is why it's so important for us that we are going to ensure, to the extent that we can, create a space that will feel as comfortable as possible. And it's a work in progress. And so at the end of every single session, we will invite participants to give us feedback. What worked? What didn't work? What can we change? Psychological safety is so important to us. And we are not psychic. We are building this to some extent based off of the feedback that we receive from people. So we really are going to want to bring your feedback into this space. So let me bring back up our slides so we can keep going here. I'm aware of our time. So what is it that we're actually talking about? We're talking about a group coaching cohort that meets weekly for 2 hours every week. This is not therapy. This is coaching, professional coaching. This is not legal advice, though we will talk about issues that can help you to find an attorney if you need an attorney, to know some of your rights, to understand about like advocating for severance pay and so on. But it's not legal advice, and it's also not therapy, though I will provide a significant number of resources to help you find a therapist should you want to go and actually access therapy yourself. This is trauma-informed, but importantly, and that's based off of the Centers for Disease Control, trauma-informed principles of practice, like doing things so that there's transparency, encouraging people to have as much self-determination as possible, valuing peer support, that is people who have shared experiences, other DEI backlash survivors, valuing culture and acknowledging the history. So many of us, part of what happens when we are pushed out of these jobs is it's actually our ancestral racialized labor trauma that gets activated. Let me just say this. My grandfather, Lupe, was a farm worker, and he was repeatedly deported. When Migra would come around and they would go through the fields and grab up all of the workers and then deport them, and sometimes my family wouldn't hear from him for quite a while until he was able to contact them again. That is mobbing. That is racialized labor mobbing. And that memory changed the DNA in my family. It changed it in him. He was, gave birth to my father, who then also led to me. And so it gets passed down on an epigenetic level, but it also gets passed down interpersonally in the culture of our families. So when I talk about being trauma-informed, that's not enough. We then talk about healing-centered. And this is Sean Ginwright's brilliant work where he says, These traumas that have to do with racism are society-wide. We cannot just focus on trauma informed as an individual person. We have to look at the entirety of society and what's happening here. This is based in critical race theory, Chicana feminisms, queer theory, neuroscience, somatic self-help, and the peer movement, the MAD movement, people who are living with mental health experiences, which I like to refer to as workplace mental injury. It's not workplace mental illness. We have been injured. And anyone who is exposed to enough danger, enough injury themselves is going to be injured. That's what happens to any of us. So this is what we are moored in unapologetically. And if you think you might want to be in a space like this in 2025, come on, because we need it. Okay, so the design of the group itself was informed by 20 years of my anti-racist and LGBTQ2S affirming group level design, facilitation, and evaluation. And a little bit about the group size. We're going to have somewhere between probably 20 to 50 people in the large group for the first hour. Then the second hour, we'll go into breakout rooms by affinity, by racial ethnic affinity and LGBTQIA, and then heterosexual cisgender affinity as well. If you have questions along the way, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. I'm going to keep talking because that's how I do this. So we're going to be doing this on Wednesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. PST, 6 to 8 CST, 7 to 9 EST. We don't know exactly what date we're going to start at because this is the first time we're doing this cohort. So I have a commitment to the facilitators to make sure that we can start when I can pay the facilitators, which is based on the funds that are going to be raised through people registering for the course. So ideally, we would start the first week of February. But if we don't yet have 20 registrants, then we will push it back a week or two until we have enough registrants so that our amazing facilitators can be paid. So the weekly agenda, the first 40 minutes of each session are going to be a didactic presentation where I will be sharing information like I've been sharing tonight. We might have other people who will share information as well. Seriously, the facilitators who are part of this coaching cohort are some of the brightest people in terms of workplace trauma recovery and DEI. So it's going to be an exciting, action-packed sharing of information. Then we're going to take a 5-minute somatic skill building and resource sharing. So every single session, we're going to be doing something that helps the body to regulate the nervous system. Then we'll do a 10-minute break and we'll come back and go into breakout rooms. So Dr. Carrie Yazid will be facilitating a Black women's breakout room. Mrs. Carrie Page will facilitate an Indigenous women's breakout room. Jaya is going to facilitate a women of color's breakout room. That would be women of color who are not Black or Indigenous. Michael is going to facilitate a men's breakout room. And I'm going to facilitate an LGBTQIA2S breakout room. And guess what? You get to tell us who you are and which breakout room you want to go into. If you're lucky enough, like me, to be BIPOC and queer, then you got choices. Okay, so we love that. We love that. Going right along. All right. So and in this group coaching cohort, we'll have an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit more, because part of, I think, what happens when we are in the DEI leadership role is that we're holding space for all of these different people, but we rarely get a chance to be people to one another. And so this is finally the space where we're going to be able to share parts of ourselves with people who value our culture, who value our background and our information. So let me just pause for a second before going into all of the weekly topics and just invite Jaya and Michael. Do either of you want to say something at this point?
I think that I'm very appreciative of how Eliana has approached this in such a thoughtful way in terms of the way that the groups are going to be structured. I'm very excited to support women of color, because women of color are the people who I center in my own DEI practice. And I'm very excited that we get to share our lived experiences with each other, because I think that sometimes we have to we don't forget, but I think we put on the back burner the fact that while we're in these roles, while we're operating in these capacities, we're still navigating systemic oppression. We're still navigating generational trauma. So it's almost having to carry like 2 backpacks at once that are filled with rocks. And so it's really important that we are able to create these safe spaces for one another, to be able to be heard, to be seen, to be validated, for things to be normalized and to heal together.
That's so good, Jaya. Thank you. I would also add that just because you're used to doing it alone doesn't mean you were designed to. You've heard Dr. Eliana say the word collective, and sometimes we get so used to terms. Like, I grew up in church, so you get used to some scriptures where you don't even hear the punch of it anymore. You know what I mean? When you're with ferociously kind facilitation, which for many of us would be new, it is jarring to realize just how much you abandon yourself. And the only reason I can say that is because I'm a master at abandoning me. I mean, the only way, well, one of the ways that I chose to survive these systems and these companies and these churches and these, consulting firms that I was subcontract for, and, moving up, I got to a point where I was like, self-abandonment is the way forward, until I contracted viral meningitis. Like, as soon as I put in my 2 weeks, I remember feeling tired, like woefully tired all of a sudden. Next thing I know, my immune system dropped and I contracted viral meningitis, lost use of my legs, and was paralyzed. And so this has a biological effect on you. You can show up for it now, or you can be forced to deal with it on a bed someday. But either way, you're going to have to face your body or show up for it. And I just want to remind you that what is being offered is something you have to choose with us. And, I say that as the worst of sinners. So,
You're like a chill inducer. Constantly like giving me chills.
I'm gonna change my LinkedIn title, like chill inducer.
And this is such a perfect example of like how we're going to do it. We're going to get real, we're going to get serious, but we're also going to laugh and we're going to giggle because, gosh darn it, we're still alive. There was a Black woman who contacted me when I was mobbed out of my job. She said, I don't know what happened. You just disappeared. But I have a feeling I know what happened. And you were liberated. Whoa. What I now understand is that when we are DEI backlash survivors, it means oftentimes that the institution could not tolerate the liberation that we are about to bring. And so this group coaching cohort is the place where we get to reconnect with that power, with that burning in our belly that is our sacred birthright, with our love for our community. And we're going to do it with our joy and our tears and our showing up for one another. Because when you can't show up right now for yourself, we're going to show up for you. When we can't show up for ourselves, you're going to show up for us. This is community. This is what it is.
And just to add one more thing, you don't have to be in DEI to participate. If you were one of the first, one of the few, or one of the only at your job, or you have a friend that's like, we're the few here, and like one of us isn't a coon, or one of us isn't being an Uncle Tom or Sambo, like, yeah, because not all kinfolk or skin folk is kinfolk. Can I get an amen from somebody in the chat? So
so excited.
Do it.
We're all like, we're going to do 2-hour group coaching cohorts, but we might be having so much fun with each other. We're like, let's do 2.5. Come on. I don't want to get off a call with you. This is too much fun. All right, so let's get into it. Let's look at some of these weekly topics. And please do, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We're going to get to them in a little bit here. So just to give you a sense of like what that first 40 minutes of didactic presentation is going to involve, we've put together some of like the themes. So the first week, we're going to talk about somatic resourcing just as a basic level so that you've got some tools that you can use to help carry you through that 10 weeks. And then WTF just happened in my life, because a lot of us, we're like working. We're working so hard because we're trying to outwork the bully. We're trying to eventually this is how we got through school. Frankly, so many of us, we got through school by just hustling and grinding, and it worked until it didn't, until you're in a toxic work environment, and then it's the worst thing ever. So then we're like, wait a minute, how did my life just blow up? It's not like I wasn't working. In fact, I was working harder than ever, So WTF just happened in my life. Okay, fine. Second week is about interoception. Interoception is an awareness of what's actually happening in our body. The brain is connected to all the organs and all the limbs in the body through what's called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, actually 80% of the information goes from the body up to the brain. And the reason why it does that is because it's actually the body that is sensing whether we are facing safety or danger. And so interoception is the beginning building block to using somatic practices for yourself. And then, of course, always bring in the radical love of our BIPOC selves. Week 3, we're talking about resources. So these are things that you can use should you end up in another workplace abuse situation to help yourself as much as possible to be as well and safe as possible. Weeks 4 through 6, we're going to start getting further into the actual neuroscience of racial stress. Importantly, I did not put this in the very first session because I want us to start developing self-help somatic skills so that when we get to the part that's the most likely to bring up all of our trauma reactions, we got some tools in our belt. And we're going to be doing this pendulation. So this is how we can tolerate some of the pain of this trauma, is we just get a little bit. We just take a little bitty bit of the trauma, and then we move back out and we get some resource. And when we feel more settled and stable and healthy and strong, then we go back to the trauma stuff again, a little bit more, and then we go back. So that pendulation is how we've actually created the curriculum itself. Then we're going to talk about embodied racial stress recovery, going into then tools of institutional betrayal and other DEI backlash. Because I think most of us, unless you've had the opportunity to get into the research, we don't know how these human resources, how executive leaderships, the effery of white supremacist business practices, frankly, I'm just going to say it. So this is the thing. We want to talk about the actual mechanisms of things like institutional betrayal, lateral violence, workplace mobbing, so that you have a sense of what it's coming before it's knocked you down. Week 7 through 10, we're going to talk about hostile work environment self-defense. So this is really how to strategically position yourself so that you're in the best situation to fight like heck. Personal reasons to stay or leave a hostile work environment. And this is really important to me. Everything that we're teaching you, it's all about just providing you information. You determine for yourself what makes the most sense. For some people, for most of us, we can't just walk away from an abusive workplace. We've got bills to pay. We have to have something else lined up. And so we're making equation. We're doing equations in our head of like, okay, can I keep the lights on if I do this? Or, my health is really suffering. Can I stick it out another 2 months or what have you? Unfortunately, because of that stress-induced analgesia that I mentioned earlier, we have missing variables in our equations. So we want to share with you some of those missing variables that may not be immediately obvious. Week 8, personal reasons to stay or leave. And then we're going to go into week 9, exit planning on your own terms if you decide that you want to go there. And then finally, week 10, bringing it all together, rejoining ourselves to ourselves and ourselves to one another.
Eliana, may I add?
Please.
The beauty of what Dr. Eliana Ramirez has put together is that you can't tame what you can't name, right? And you can't name what you won't notice. And so the beginning is building up reps together with ferociously kind facilitators on noticing. And then you're going to learn all this language that's going to convince you that, I'm not crazy. F them. Okay. And then you're going to be able to tame, not them, but what's going on here. And then once you can notice and name and tame, you can play again. And for anyone in the chat, I just want to ask, are you tired of not feeling like yourself? Then you got to go through the tough stuff, but you don't have to do it alone. And that's what's being offered here today.
Beautiful. Thank you. And so where will we do these? We'll do them on Zoom. And as I mentioned before, you'll have also opportunities to, we'll meet first for a 30-minute intake call. Everyone needs to be essentially screened. I can give you more information. You can see if this is actually something that you want. I can learn a little bit about you as well. And then in between those weekly sessions, I'm going to create a whole bunch of different activities that you can do on your own if you want to. No pressure. Everything is an invitation that we will offer to you. But some really cool things that if you want to keep up the work and your own exploration, that we can have that as well. So who is this for? This is for the DEI workforce who have experienced workplace abuse like mobbing, sabotage, termination. This is, as Michael was mentioning, some people have been doing the DEI work, but it wasn't their actual job title. And so if that's your experience, you're more than welcome. Importantly, this is for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color who agree to avoid discriminatory language and behaviors. This is a zero tolerance policy, unfortunately, but I got to do it for all of our safety. So, if we've been doing DEI, we know a little bit about what it means to step in it, because we all do, because we're human. So this doesn't mean that we're not going to make mistakes with each other, but it does mean that, like, if we can't essentially get it together after that mistake and do some repair in community, then we won't be able to continue with that person in community. I am especially interested in ensuring that any misogynoir that might come up is immediately handled, because that is something Black women are just being inundated with outrageous levels of psychological violence everywhere in the world. And so we absolutely cannot tolerate, as well as anti-LGBT. And frankly, there's a lot of discrimination against people who are living with neurodiversity, as well as visible and invisible disabilities. We are especially welcoming LGBTQIA2S community, people living with neurodiversity, immigrants, Muslims, older adults, people living with disabilities, and especially, and I can't even see my own slide, my goodness, so sorry. But we want you all to join us, please. Okay, so getting to the thing. And this is the part that, we really especially want feedback on. So it's 10 sessions. The full price for the group coaching cohort is $1,000, which comes to $50 an hour. And if you think about it, that's what that might mean for your life. The early bird discount for people who register before January 31st, we are offering 15% off. That would be $850. And we know that a lot of people, finances are tight. And so we want to give an offer that if you are able to bring another person into the group coaching cohort, we will give you 40% off and that person 40% off. This is not only a strategy that will help to bring down the cost for you and hopefully make it a little bit more accessible, but importantly, it's a way that you can give a gift to somebody else that you know, that you trust, that you want to be in community with, and that, essentially, when we heal together, it helps us in the long run. So if you already have an existing relationship with someone and then you bring them in here, then you both get to go after the end of the group coaching cohort and continue the momentum of that healing. And just welcoming questions or comments in the chat here. And then we also have paying it forward scholarships. So if you happen to be lucky enough to be in a job right now and you feel really secure and you have a little bit of extra that you can donate for other people who really need this kind of support, but they don't have the finances at this moment, please do consider making a contribution. We already have one amazing person who's made a contribution for a scholarship. And I really hope, if any of this sounds of interest to you, without thinking about the funding side of it, please do schedule a 30-minute call, because we can see, like, are there options here? What can we do? And then the final thing that I want to put out there is that we really do want to hear from you what your thoughts are about what we've shared, any questions, comments, concerns you might have. And to thank you for your time, I've put together a feedback survey. If you complete it, you can put your name into a drawing to have a free 45-minute coaching call with me at no cost. And we just really welcome your feedback, because we genuinely are going to change things as we get feedback from folks.
We're in a scary time, right? Like, to see all these big companies, I won't name them because they're not paying me to name them. And even if they were, no, keep your money. But they're showing their true colors is really what they were doing. And if anything, can you imagine what it was like to be a DEI leader there, or to be a Black and brown BIPOC Indigenous person there? And so But other companies like Costco and others are really showing their face and saying, no, we're doubling down actually. And I have felt this bracing oftentimes with like, did I choose the wrong career? Or if you're a Black and brown body in an all white space, or maybe you're doing great work and you're under a supervisor, whatever body they have that is really a part of the executive white body culture, you're not by yourself.
I want to just co-sign like so much of what Michael and Eliana have said here today. I believe that, whether you choose to remain within a practitioner capacity as a DEI practitioner, or even if you're in an informal DEI role, that can be something like an employee resource group leader or DEI council member, so on and so forth, that this type of collectivism and healing is so necessary, especially given what I believe will be coming in the next few years, where we are going to see those sort of anti-DEI advocacy efforts intensify. And so this is really a space for us to also build community and a support network amongst each other. And so I think that all of us don't really look at this as like, oh, 10 weeks, you're done, like never going to talk to you again. This is really about building these fortified relationships that are going to help us continue to engage in this work without continuing to injure ourselves in the process.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Can I mention a study, Jaya? So to piggyback off Jaya, there's call it the monkey buddy test. That's what I call it. And so before like people actually did more listening to human right or like animal rights stuff, there was an experiment done. I'm not supporting how this was done, but they took a monkey from its community and they put it in like this cage and they hooked up its brain and arms like it read its cortisol and stress levels, and then they like rocked the cage and turned lights on and off and played like loud like ska and like lion roars and basically scared the living hell out of this monkey. And they measured its stress levels, which were through the roof, right? And it was tucked in the corner like freaking out. And then they had observed the monkey and they went back to the colony or community, where the monkeys live. And they were like, this is the monkey it spends the most time with. So they took that monkey, did not hook that monkey up to anything, put it in the cage with the other monkey still hooked up. And they did the same thing. And so what they found when they looked at the readings was that all cortisol levels, all brainwave activity like around stress was cut in half. And so if you feel like you've lost your person at work, or if you feel like, the person that in that meeting where you would just look across the table and just like understand like, yeah, that was crazy. I heard that too, is gone. Like, or you don't have that person. Like, this is the kind of space that's going to give you a circle full of people that could be your monkey buddy. It's not racist. I'm just, it's part of the experiment. Let me cook, okay? So, I know. They're just going to talk to me after this. But my point is you don't have to be alone. The system is set up to isolate us and to make us be like, you're the director of this, but screw those titles. Like, I'd rather come in with a council, and I would trade a director title, maybe not the pay, but a director title any day to come in with a crew of people and say, look, we're saying this, right? And so, but even if you don't have that at work, you can have that in a safe place, and that's what's being offered. And so, and if you already have that, praise be. But at the end of the day, it's wonderful to be in a safe place where emotions are safe to feel. Yeah. And sometimes you can process your own crap by empathetically connecting and listening to someone else's story, not crap. You know what I mean? So
we know what you mean.
Yeah. I've dropped into the chat a link to my website where there's more information about this DEI Backlash group coaching cohort. If you would like to schedule a 30-minute call, when you click on this link or use this QR code that's in front of you right now around the survey itself gives an option to enter your name for the free 45-minute coaching call raffle. It also has a place that if you know already that you're interested to be screened for this group, you can immediately put in your name and email address, and I will reach out to you and schedule that 30-minute call. And again, the purpose of the group and what's different between group coaching versus group therapy, that would be an important thing. Group therapy is something where you sign up to have a licensed independent therapist provide you an intervention that will help your mental health. This is not group therapy. This is group coaching that is about providing you information so that you can make decisions to achieve goals in your own life, whatever those goals might be. Your goals might be to start to heal some of the physical health challenges that you have. Okay, then we're providing you with resources and information so that you can go to a primary care physician or somebody who is a medical provider to help you. Maybe one of your personal goals is like what Michael was saying, you want to get back to feeling like yourself again. Then we will provide you with information that will help you to disentangle how your own change in identity was shifted by that workplace abuse and trauma. So we're not doing therapy for you. We're providing you with information that will help you to work towards whatever your personal, professional goals are. I would like to acknowledge that for some of us, just even hearing the words workplace trauma can activate a trauma response in us. And it's huge that you all have shown up here with everything else that's going on in the world. So I'm going to invite, if you want to stay on to watch one more very short music video. It's called Talk to Me Nice by Tony Jones, who is an amazing singer who writes affirmation music, because this is, again, remember that pendulation that I was mentioning? It's a really good idea to do something to give your nervous system some space before you turn off Zoom and then go deal with whatever else is going on in your life. So we're going to share that as a last song to just kind of settle. If you would like to stay on, you're more than welcome to. Before I turn off, is Jaya, Michael, anything you want to say?
It's been always a joy to be in community with both of you. And I'm really looking forward to having the folks who joined us today join our community and have us all heal and grow together. So thank you, Eliana, for creating this space. And Michael, for your inspirational words and your joy, because I do believe joy is an act of resistance. So I'm really looking forward to meeting more of you in the coming weeks.
Amen. But like you said, joy is an act of resistance. And I just want to, for everyone in the chat and everyone listening, this group may not be for you, but it sure as hell is for someone that you've been thinking of during this call. And if there's someone that, whether ancestors or any bond of love or adoration you have for those around you, as was brought to heart and mind, I would say it is your responsibility to contact them and just let them know. And maybe it's not what we're doing, but let them know that there are resources out there and community to support them. When I first left a toxic job, one of my first, it was a white man who came alongside me and said, he was like, I think I may be a friend for a season, but I think there's a community that you benefit from. Don't worry about the money. And he stepped up and stepped in. And so just because he had a white body didn't mean that he wasn't meant to be a part of my community and my healing. And so if that's you here today, regardless of your body, I just want you to know, like, show up, okay? And reach out to the person or the face that came to heart and mind during this call.
Thank you for that. And if you are in a white body, there's another group coaching cohort that's going to start as well. So we've got you. It's just this first one, we're going to start with BIPOC. Okay, thank you, everyone who's here. Thank you for participating. Thank you in advance for any feedback that you might give us in that survey. And with that, I am going to take us out through the song Talk to Me Nice. And thank you, Jaya. Thank you, Michael. Big love to both of you so much. And to Dr. Carrie Azid and Mrs. Carrie Page, to you as well. Thank you all. We'll be in community.